I'm gonna be ranking countries that participated in World War II based on how well they did in the war and how bad they were in terms of war crimes. So let's go. So first up is Australia, and I mean, Australians were pretty good, so I would put them into B tier. Like, they did a lot in like North Africa. They did a lot against the Japanese, and I don't really know if they committed any war crimes, so I think they're B tier, so pretty good. Belgium, honestly, is D. They got overrun pretty quickly by the Germans, and yeah, and there were lots of like collaborationist regimes, so I don't know. I don't think they were that important. Brazil, just like Australia, they fought well in Italy. They were actually pretty good against the Germans in Italy, and they're pretty underrated, so I would put them into B tier. I think this is India. I would also put India into B tier. They like contributed a lot of manpower. They fought in Africa, Asia against the Japanese. They stopped them from going further into India, and they fought in like Burma. So I think Indians deserve a nice B spot as well. Bulgaria, I mean, they didn't do much. They're C. Like, they contributed a little bit against like partisans in Yugoslavia and Greece, but one thing that is very respectful about Bulgaria is that they were the only nation that was part of Axis powers that didn't want to give up their Jewish citizens. So Germans asked numerous times that Bulgarian government has to send their Jews into Germany, into concentration camps, but they refused many times, so we have to respect them for that. And they were also the only country that was on the losing side in World War II to gain land, so that's pretty funny. Canada, I think Canada goes into A tier, so they did well against Germans, I think, in North Africa. They also fought against the Japanese, and they also were one of the main contributors in landings in Normandy. And I think the Canadians were the main liberators of the Netherlands from the Germans, so they're very respected by the Dutch. So yeah, I would put them into A tier. I don't know of any like Canadian war crimes, so although they did commit quite a few in, I think, World War I, but for World War II, I don't know. China, I mean, they go into A tier, in my opinion. They did very well against the Japanese. They lost the second amount of men after Soviet Union. They withstand against the Japanese. They suffered horrible atrocities. They also lost quite a bit of land, but they never surrendered, kept fighting, kept resisting. If China had fallen, the Japanese would probably win against Americans and English, so I think they deserve the A spot. This is, I think, Communist China. I put them into B. I don't know much about them. Actually, C. They probably committed quite a few war crimes, but I don't really know much about them. They probably fought a lot against the Japanese, and they did win the Chinese Civil War after, but this is for World War II, and I don't think they contributed that much. Czechoslovakia, for I don't know, it's probably like same as Belgium. I mean, maybe even F. They didn't even put any resistance against the Germans, so yeah. I mean, I don't know if they are really considered to be part of World War II, but who cares? F tier. Denmark also F tier. They surrendered in 6 hours, so that is pretty embarrassing. Finland, I would put actually in A tier. They did very good against the Soviet Union in 1940. White Death, best sniper in history, and they also pushed quite a bit into Russian territory later. I mean, they still lost, but I mean, they did amazing job. Like, they stayed independent on the border with the Soviet Union. That's a pretty good accomplishment. France has an awful reputation in World War II, but I would put them in B tier. They continued fighting French resistance, very good. Man, they came out as winners. I think B spot is appropriate, like at the bottom, the B spot. They were much better in World War One, but what can you do? And now we have the main character, main bad guy, that's Germany. And militarily, I'll probably put Germany in like probably S, to be honest. But it's very hard to do that when you know they committed like among the worst war crimes in history of humanity. The Holocaust is the most well-known war crime, genocide in history. It was terrible. So yeah, now we have to put them low for that. If we're going militarily, it would probably be an S or A tier. All the war crimes they did, that was insane and awful. So I think C tier is appropriate. Hungary, I think it's D tier. They didn't do much, and they also committed horrible atrocities, especially in Yugoslavia. So they're not very good. They didn't do good militarily, and they tried to change sides, and they committed lots of war crimes, not good. Greece, I think, is a B tier. They fought against Italians, they fought against Germans well, they had a very good partisan movement. Greece was very capable in World War II, in my opinion. Italy, D tier. They really didn't do much. They couldn't fight against Greece, couldn't defeat the British in Egypt without Germany's help, and they just committed awful war crimes, occupied territories, and they changed sides. So yeah, Italy is pretty bad. Japan is the second main bad guy after Germany, and I think they are in the same league, maybe behind. I think militarily Germany had more success, but Japan also, just unbelievable what they did. They swept through entire Asia in a matter of months, conquering everything, reaching like India, Australia, almost defeating China. But just like Germany, they committed awful war crimes. I actually think they committed worse war crimes. Japanese war crimes are not studied enough. That was just pure barbaric what they did. I wouldn't recommend you to search up what the Japanese did during World War II, but it was very bad. C tier. They're worse than Germany, I think. Luxembourg, F tier. It's a shame. Like, what can you do? They were just overrun, and that's it. Mexico, bro, I don't know even what Mexico did during World War II. I don't even know if they participated. Yeah, whatever. D tier. Dutch, also D tier. They collapsed in 10 days, I think, or something like that, and they didn't do much after that. So yeah, New Zealand, they're like Australia, but a little bit less impactful, but they also fought, I think, a lot against the Japanese and North Africa, so B tier. Norway, they held out longer than France, so you have to give the credit for that. But I don't really think they were better than France. Maybe they had a very good resistance movement. I'll put them ahead of France, actually. Like, they lasted longer than them, and they had also a very good resistance movement. They did have a very bad Quisling government, but the Norway itself didn't commit war crimes, I think. Poland, it's a shame, but I'll put Poland on top, B tier. They withstand pretty good against Germany and the Soviets, but they couldn't do much. I always feel bad for Polish people for what happened in World War II. They have a resistance movement. The Warsaw Uprising was also very important, but I don't think I can give it much more than a B tier. But I always respect Poland. I always respect them for what they did in World War II, and I feel bad how they were sold at the end by the Western Allies. Romania, they're similar to Hungary, but I'll put them actually in C tier. They contributed quite a bit in Stalingrad and against the Soviets, but they did change sides, and they also killed the second amount of Jews after Germany. So that's a very crazy fact, in my opinion. But they actually contributed militarily. They refused to attack Yugoslavia, but at the end they changed sides, committed lots of war crimes, so I think C tier is appropriate. South Africa, I don't know what they did. Actually, Mexico can go here as well. I mean, I just don't know what these countries did. They sent some troops. Maybe I'm arrogant because I don't know, so I think it's a fair place. Spain didn't really fight in World War II, but they had their one division, Blue Division, that fought in Battle of Moscow, but I mean, they, aside from that, they didn't do much. Like, no reason to have them here. Thailand, straight down the bottom of D tier. Like, they didn't do much. I mean, they were the only Japanese ally in Asia, but they switched sides at the end and they didn't do much, but they probably were more useful than these four. But I don't know if they committed any war crimes or whatever, but I think it's a fair spot. And then we got UK, and for UK I think it's an easy A tier. They fought well, withstand against Germans. They were the only ones in Europe fighting against them at one point. They fought on every single front you can imagine, against Japanese, against the Germans, Italians, in Africa, Asia, Europe, everywhere. They did have crucial decisions in India, but I heard some people talk about that stuff, that it was not under their control completely, so you can maybe forgive them for that. So I think Brits deserve an easy A spot. United States, I think that's an S. They were the most dominant power, most dominant industry. I mean, their army was fantastic, navy fantastic, air force fantastic. They committed very little war crimes. I think their worst one was when they bombed Dresden, but I mean, like, Germany at that point was kinda asking for that. They contributed a lot. They sent weapons to Russia. I think they're the only S here, in my opinion. Soviet Union, they're B tier, I think. Definitely on top of B tier. Militarily, they're S, just like Germany, but they committed a lot of war crimes and they were very questionable. Like, at the start of the war, they collaborated with Germans, splitting up Poland and stuff, committing horrible war crimes, deportations, gulag. They were very good, contributed a lot to Allied victory, but what they did, not only to the Germans, like the raping, looting, everything, but also to other lands they conquered in Eastern Europe and Balkans. Then they enslaved all those people. It was not good. So yeah, for all those war crimes, they were not worse than Germany's war crimes and Japanese, but they were very bad. Yugoslavia, actually put Yugoslavia in A. Like, Yugoslav partisans were the biggest resistance moment in Europe, so they were very effective. I'll put them in B, because they did commit lots of war crimes, and after they got to power, they also killed a lot of people, purged a lot of people, so I think it's only fair to put them here. Militarily, they were very good. They were a big headache to the Germans. I think at some point, Axis powers had to keep 500,000 soldiers in Yugoslavia just to keep under control relatively, and still they couldn't do it. Croatia, to me, is straight F. They committed horrible war crimes, just like the Japanese. No one talks about what they did. Only Germany's war crimes are focused on, but trust me, Japanese and Croatian war crimes were probably worse, much more barbaric. They were the only country, along with Germany, to have their own concentration camps, where they killed Serbs and Jews, and so it was a very disgusting regime, and militarily they were awful. They couldn't keep the partisans under control, like the Italians, and Germans had to help constantly. I think they deserve the F tier. And here I added Slovakia. I forgot to add them earlier, and I think they're F tier as well. Just like Croatia, they committed war crimes. They didn't do much militarily. They had a national uprising against the Germans, but I mean, they didn't do much. They were a clan state, and I don't really know about Holocaust in Slovakia, but it was probably pretty bad, so I think F tier is deserving. So this is how the final tier list looks. I mean, I think it's pretty good. Subscribe, remember to touch grass. Goodbye.